Yeah, so it looks like we have a good amount of participants here, so we'll kind of jump in. Appreciate everybody being here for the webinar today. I think I'll start off by just by saying we have a lot of information here. So there's a lot that we could cover. We're gonna touch more high level. I think we could talk on this for days, that's included. So
Yeah.
at the end, we'll have a QR code so you can download this full presentation. And then as you go, please add questions in the Q&A section. So we're going to start off with kind of introducing myself, Chris Bulkey here at BluShark, Senior VP of Sales. And then we have Jess. I don't know if you can introduce yourself real quick.
Yeah. I'm Jess Strickland, VP of Sales for Lawmatics. Really excited for the topic today. I actually, in a previous life for about 8 years, got to talk a lot more about what Chris is talking about today. Sold SEO websites, for medical practices, and so very familiar with the SEO side of it. But obviously, going to talk a bit about the intake side, which is now my new reality with Lawmatics. So really excited for the topic today.
Yes, yes. And I think these two things go very well together. We're talking about first click to obviously client and how to take it from full stage, so to speak, full funnel. On my end, I want to start off with local SEO and really kind of laying the foundation. And the goal here is to talk about the importance of local SEO and how that has benefits and how that weighs factors when it comes to AI, ChatGPT, Gemini AIO. So we'll start off by talking about the local, the importance of a Google Business Profile. And I think the first thing I wanted to mention was we need to have, and it's vital to have a Google Business Profile for every location or every address that you have. We need that in order to show in the three pack. And you'll notice that near me search results, sometimes there's no city in the name. It's really based on proximity. So if your location is here and somebody's searching for injury lawyer, Google is essentially trying to determine the best results based on your location and a lot of other factors. But if you don't have a Google business profile, you're never going to show. So that's step one. Once we set up the Google profile, the next question that comes up a lot is how far can I reach, right? With that profile, do I have a 1 mile radius, a 15-mile radius? How far out can you actually rank from your location? And that's really a tricky question because it depends on the market you're in. And if you look at this red outline, that's how Google views this Greensboro market. These outside areas, we call these service areas, Oak Ridge, Cleansville, Pleasant Garden. These are going to be areas that have population that are outside of what Google considers the Greensboro market. So the question is, are you able to rank out into these markets? The saturation of the law firms, example, if there's not three firms in Oak Ridge, you have the opportunity to rank from your Greensboro office into these other markets. Now, one question we get a lot is, if I'm in Oak Ridge, I see people and other firms from Greensboro ranking in my market. How come I'm not ranking in their market? And the answer there is pretty simple. It's Greensboro has, 30, 40, 50 PI firms, criminal firms, et cetera, a lot of competition. So it's going to be much harder to rank from an outside suburban small market into a competitive market. So it's really important to understand your market and how far out the capability is. Um, the next thing we take a look at is when done right, we have two different firms. What does that look like when one is optimized properly and one is not? And here's an example of a firm in South Carolina, firm A versus firm B. Firm A, obviously missing some opportunity. This gives you kind of a visual representation of telling you where they're ranking. Now, these balls or these circles are radius estimations of their average ranking. So this firm is ranking inside the top 10 in a lot of cases where this firm is ranking in the top three. And they're, I think, within a couple blocks of each other. So this is important to understand that you can rank out farther, but there's a lot more to it as far as optimizing your Google profile. When we take a look at an existing firm, and this is a good case study example, this is an existing firm with a decent foundation, but poor local reach. You can see where they're at right here. Once we do real optimization and we get that set up correctly, and we start doing the different levels that we'll kind of talk about here, you're able to see what happens in month 3 and month 5. Now, this is an example of a truck accident lawyer search. So you can see what can actually be done and how far out they can rank when optimized correctly. Um, it's important to know that the fields need to be optimized correctly and review counts are needed. So the engagement with the Google profile is very important. This is, I would say, a better example of a more competitive firm. So some of you firms out there maybe say, hey, I'm doing pretty well right now. but is there better opportunity? Can you expand your reach? And this is an example of a firm that was more built out, more robust. And after optimizing properly, we were able to get them from where you see here ranking pretty well into the top three consistently across the board within 2 months. So here's the next one here. So then we start looking at setting up a new office. And if you're in the market and you're looking to expand into new office locations, the research here is critical. So what we like to do is take a look at more of a holistic approach, not just, somebody that says, I'm getting a new office in Columbia because that's what feels right, or I want to avoid Greenville because it's competitive. We want to look at the holistic view of how competitive is the market from a Google standpoint and how much opportunity is there. And when you look at this research, you'll notice that Greenville has a population of 72,000, but the service areas around it that you have the opportunity to rank in give it a total population reach of 270, where Columbia only has a total population of 223. And then the other layers of competition, you consider this a red market where there's actually more competition, harder to rank than Greenville. So when we do the research, we can say, okay, what does the research actually show? It's showing that Greenville is the best opportunity here because of the overall search radius. To take that a step farther, get more granular, once we've identified the fruitful market, the next thing we need to do is understand where at in the market do we want to position our office. And this is really important because just finding the first open office space or the cheapest space isn't necessarily the best. So what we want to do is we want to analyze Google's view of the three pack and where exactly you want to be in proximity to competition and the searchers that you're looking to reach. So in this, you'll see these black dots. These are the local three pack competitors who's ranking in the three pack right now. Yellow are other competitors. And then these other pins are going to be other factors like urgent care centers, hospitals, et cetera. So it's important to take a big view. From there and through the research, we can say in this example, this is the number one recommended area in this fruitful market. This is recommended area number two. And this is going to be important because once we get to there, we're able to basically vet out the office. And these are crucial aspects when you're looking for the right office. 4 quick things to make sure that you solidify. Avoid executive office suites, but individual offices technically work. No same primary category. And this is crucial. You cannot be in the same building as a law firm that has the same primary category. Typically, only one is going to show up. Commercial signage. So you must have a storefront and you have to have images of the signage. And then lastly, location, 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 right? It's not based on what you think the hotspot in town is, but rather where the best is from an SEO perspective. When done right, you can see some quick results. So this is a firm that we were able to get a competitive number of reviews in the market and the engagement was there. And in just 3 months, we were able to take them from not ranking brand new office to the top spot. Now, it's important to understand that a lot of this had to do with picking the right market and making sure that we got the review count that was needed to compete and actually convert at a higher level. So once we have the local SEO dialed in, there's a couple things to look at as far as highlights. What's changing right now? What are some things that I would say is some bonus material for you guys? Right now, one thing that we noticed through a lot of testing and kind of I would say something that we saw coming was the user engagement focus. So Google's leaning away from basic Q&As and FAQs, and they replaced the FAQ button with a ask button. So what they're looking to do there is essentially get the actual information that users are looking for rather than the information that you're looking to provide, right? And this is important. You need to make sure that we fill out the Q&A in the back end so you can protect your narrative. You want to make sure that when users are asking, this button, it's going to create AI to provide an answer. You want to create the narrative by supplying that information correctly on the back end, right? Another thing to keep in mind is Google Maps share button changed recently. It removed the share on X for share on Reddit and Facebook. And that's very telling because it shows that people are favoring forum or higher user engagement platforms. And it's leveraging information from social platforms and greater internet to highlight elements of the business. So definitely something to keep in mind. Last thing here, as far as the local, is the focus on Google profile landing page fundamentals. And this is something that we often see missed, is once the Google profile is fully optimized, the landing page that profile is directed to is crucial. The landing page needs to have keyworded and optimized title tags, headers, etc., for the city in the address. And the on-page content optimization needs to be at least 500 words and have deeper supporting pages that are under that page. Call it a silo. And then we want to have proper internal linking. Essentially, we want topical authority that's going to be referencing from that Google profile to that landing page, giving Google an exact, clear picture of what you do and who you help, right? And then we want to have backlinks built to that URL to build authority for that silo of the site, schema and markup on the page, local reviews, etc. And then bonus, if you can include testimonials, case studies, and or case scenarios. So this is going to be one of the biggest parts of funneling in the Google profile, optimizing that correctly, and then making sure the landing page on the site is dialed in correctly, and you have that topical authority in that cluster of content to really give Google the information it needs to understand you are the best choice for that search. All right, so now the fun part, and I would say we're getting a lot more and more questions. This is really taking over is AI. So when we look at Gemini AI overviews, I think if you start off by showing some examples. And we've done a lot of different case studies, been working on this for over 2 years. With a well built out Google profile, especially with regard to the page of the content that Google profile is connected to, it's important to have those things synergistic because it does produce results. Example here, when someone searches for top malpractice lawyers in Long Island, one of our clients here is pulling up, but it's also important to note that it may show a 3-pack instead of a summary. But this is a good example of showing that it works. Next, wrong button there. Going back to the landing page best practice when it comes to Gemini AI overviews. We already covered this. I wanted to add that in there again just to emphasize. These things are crucial not only for the local rankings, but what that does to benefit the actual Gemini AI. In here, you can see consistent increase in Google profile reviews lead to a ranking in Gemini. And this is a very important, crucial factor. Consistent reviews. So what we did here to take a step back is we did a study and we did a case study here. We had 10 new clients or 10 clients that set up new Google profiles. In 3 months, they got 30 reviews consistently and obviously optimized, had the right landing page set up. 10 out of 10 of those clients were ranking in AIO and ChatGPT. Not 9 out of 10, but 10 out of 10. So we saw a very clear correlation that consistent reviews on the profiles, not getting 30 at once, we're getting 10 one week and waiting a month to get another 10. Consistent reviews to the profile on top of everything else enable them to have consistent rankings in Gemini AIO and ChatGPT. So pretty exciting. And I think that's something that we're seeing more and more that's producing a lot of benefit and a lot of high level results. So the last part of Gemini is the AI mode. And hopefully everybody's familiar with AI mode. AI mode is essentially more in depth. It's more advanced query searches. So it's going to allow users to have more conversational search. And in here, we did similar thing where we did some case studies to get a better understanding of how this works. The question here is, are AI mode search results impacted by local SEO? And what we found is often who's ranking in the 3-pack is getting love in the AI mode. So yes, there is a direct correlation. In this case, in AI mode, Bakersfield, CA, best employment lawyer, one of our clients is pulling up here. Now, to put more emphasis on this and show a really clear correlation, we go into AI mode and we search, we find this client. And what we're seeing is AI mode results for this case, best lawyer. When you open the link, it's taking you directly to the Google business profile, right? So the AI mode search results is directing you to the Google profile. So we can see a clear correlation that yes, local results are factoring AI Gemini mode. So lastly here, we'll talk about ChatGPT and then we'll finish up with some bonus stuff. So ChatGPT is obviously a big topic. And it's a little different than Gemini AI overview, but there is a lot of correlation on things that you need. So here's an example of a client, best personal injury law firm in Plainville, New Jersey. And what we're seeing with this result, same look and feel that we saw all throughout 2025. In this case, it's showing one option, and it's showing 2 bullet points at the top around the local. What is the location, and how many reviews did that Google business profile have? But there's no link or phone number or no call to action. So what it's essentially doing is it's driving people from ChatGPT to Google. And we're seeing that time and time again. Here's another case study example. So in this case, we search for best personal injury lawyer in Aurora. And what we can see is consistently getting an increase in Google business profile reviews leads to a ranking in ChatGPT, just like Gemini AIO. So it's to just circle back and take a step away here for a second. Consistent reviews are key. Set the foundation for Google profile, optimize everything, have the right landing page, and then consistent reviews on that Google profile are going to allow you to pull more consistently in ChatGPT, Gemini AIO, and we're seeing that time and time again. And again, this is going to be surface level. Happy to answer any Q&A at the end here. The last thing that before I pass over to Jess and kind of talk about taking these leads to the next step is the bonus features here. On-page content optimizations and schema markup are crucial for Gemini AI results. So getting verdicts, settlements, post about those everywhere and make sure the schema and the markup on the site are dialed in correctly. And then testimonials, reviews on your Google profile, website, Yelp, social. These are the three basic fundamentals to make sure that you have a shot once your Google profile is optimized to actually rank in some of these Gemini AIO searches. The on-page optimization. So this is, I would say we get a lot of questions about what that actually means. So when you think about the content, you want to answer it like you're answering a question. You want to put answers near the top of the page and avoid long intros. Make sure your schema and your coding, your markup is dialed in. And then a big thing right now is topic clusters. You want to create topical authority and create clusters of authoritative content. Headings do matter. And you want to make sure you have bullet points and numbered lists. When it comes to ChatGPT, it's very similar to Gemini AIO, but there's a few variances. Results are important. Verdicts, settlements, post about those again everywhere. Make sure the schema on the markup on the site's dialed in. Awards and recognition, super lawyers, best law firm. Again, schema markup on the site for those. Testimonials, reviews on your profile, website, Yelp, social. Lawyer profiles and citation sites are huge here. Things like Avo. And then press and authority. Wikipedia, local best of, press releases. These are all things that are going to enhance your ability to rank on ChatGPT. And here's a quick scan of the code if you guys want to download this part of the presentation. It'll give you everything included with what Jess is going to cover. And then happy to answer any Q&A at the end of the call here. So I'll kind of pass it over to you, Jess.
Cool, Chris. I think there was a couple of
Yeah.
questions. I don't know if you want to address them
Oh, yeah,
because
let's
people
do
may
it.
not want to hear what I have to say, and I'd rather their questions get
Oh,
out
yeah, I
before.
didn't even see them pop up. So
Yeah, can I this is Nalini. I'll read a couple of them off for you there. And we had a couple from people who were similar. The other thing about the scan is that I have it at the end of the
oh,
presentation, as
yeah,
long as you guys are also using you're using the main link, correct, just to share
Correct.
here.
Yep.
Perfect. Yeah. So if we refresh that at the end, you'll get the scan and it'll be able to give you all of the slide
I'll
deck
keep that there for now.
for both of them. It's a different QR code at the end, so I would have them not scan this one. Chris, if you want to go back
Oh,
to the next one. Yeah, sorry. All
kidding.
right. So one of the first questions here, Chris, and you get this often, is, well, what if I have national practice? How do we account for this for a local play, or what does that look like for optimization?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. We do get that quite a bit. The challenge with national presence is the only way to rank in a local market is to have a local presence. So if one of your goals is to rank in a local market, you still need to have local presence with the Google profile. The benefit with national presence is the organic focus, and that's not something we talked a lot about today. Ranking organically is where more of the national play is going to come. But in order to rank in a market, you must have a Google business profile and have a local office. So the question there is priorities typically. Most national firms I talk to do have some HQs, and we leverage that for, call it proof of concept or building out that foundation to show what works and making sure that we're putting our focus on those local markets that make sense for that national practice. In rare cases where there's no focus on local, then it's all going to be more of an organic play. And there is things that can be done to benefit from ranking on ChatGPT and the AI overviews are more organic, but you're always going to miss out on that local presence.
Awesome. And then there's more of a generic question here, where I guess you can take it however you want, but how do you determine what is a location that's best for SEO purposes? So it's pretty broad.
Yeah, I think that really comes down to two things. One, understanding what we see on the research side. So where we can identify a population worthy of setting up an actual location. What do those markets look like beyond that? What is our actual reach? And if we can find competitors in the market that are showing the reach that's call it worthy of setting up an office, that's step one. Step two is connecting with the actual law firm and understanding what their ideal client is. If, for example, if they're doing estate planning and they're looking for high net clients, some of the markets that we've identified for high population might not be a good fit. So we want to make sure we take that in consideration and do research there as well. And when we can find a market that the law firm feels strongly about, and we also feel strongly about from the research side, that those two things typically marry into a really good opportunity.
Perfect. So those are some of the questions there, and then we're gonna have some time at the end. We're doing great on time here. Jess will kind of go through that next step. Now you got the pipeline, you got the clients, but how do you convert those? How do you make sure that we're actually monetizing what you're spending on the marketing side? And then at the end, keep those questions coming because we'll do an FAQ at the end.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks, Nalini. It's a pretty
You
good
stop sharing here.
intro. I'll share my screen and kind of take over from that same slide. So, Chris, if you just want to let me know you got me here and we're
I
good.
can see you. Yep, I can see. I can see your calendar. Just kidding.
Oh, nah,
I'm just
perfect.
kidding.
You can see all the things I've got going today. Cool. So, like Nalini was just mentioning, we just talked about showing up in search and the impact of driving quality leads, right? Kind of the first step of that puzzle is critical. But the second step of that puzzle is how do we maximize all of the efforts that we're doing from an SEO standpoint, whether it's organic, whether it's paid, and making sure that we are not just capturing those leads, but we're converting them. So we're going to be talking about maximizing that conversion funnel, and we'll dive into it. So um, I think the thing that I hear on a daily basis, and I listen to my reps calls, I'm involved in a lot of calls, they're getting a lot of leads. Leads isn't always the issue. The problem is once that lead comes in, uh, there's a lot of drop off from initial inquiry to actually becoming a hired matter. So that could be from ever getting in touch with the people that submit a lead. That could be from getting in touch with them, but maybe they're not qualified, or moving them through the steps of the process as quickly as possible because it is really competitive. It's obviously an emotional state in most cases. And that's where there's a lot of drop off and breakage. And so we're going to be sharing some ideas of how to leverage AI specifically with lead scoring so that we can move quickly, but focus the team's skill and attention on the right fit leads so that we're converting the best cases every single time. So uh, the reality for most of the firms, right? It doesn't necessarily mean a full pipeline is a healthy pipeline, but most firms are treating every lead the same. A lead comes in and it's usually order of operation, right? You came in at 2 p.m., you're going to get called first, and that lead that came in at 2:20 is going to be called at 2:20. But that lead at 2:20 may have been the perfect fit lead, and we don't have a really great process to be able to filter through that. So that's a challenge, right? Intake teams are often overwhelmed. The manual work that goes in with intaking new leads is really, really heavy and robust, from scheduling, from intake forms, from just phone tag back and forth, to actually get on the phone and see if they're actually the right fit. That's often taking a lot of the team's time and energy. And then manual reviewing of leads is inconsistent, right? I think a lot of times about like my best sales rep versus a brand new sales rep. There's very varying skills, right? And if you've got an intake member that's been there for 10 years and they can spot a great lead from the moment that it comes in because they know they've been there, they've done that, but you have someone new that comes in, there's a major learning curve. How do we level up that skill set? How do we level up the consistency in which review or leads are reviewed? And then, typically follow-ups dependent on availability, not necessarily the urgency, right? If a team is strapped and there's a lot of leads coming in, it's hard for them to prioritize the leads that are maybe the best fit for the firm. And this is something that we want to solve for, right? And so um, where our conversions break down, why leads are typically falling through the cracks. Again, I hear this day in and day out where firms are struggling with this, and this is ultimately what we set out to solve for firms, but slow response times. Leads come in maybe after hours. They come in over the weekends. They come in when the staff is busy and they're not responded to immediately. There's no automations in place to help get them responded to move them steps in the journey further. And that can lead them to looking elsewhere, right? That's that idea of breakage where if Chris's team is doing a ton of work to drive really quality leads, but the firm isn't able to get back to those leads in a timely manner, they're probably not going to wait around and just hope that they hear from the firm. They'll probably keep on their journey. Maybe they go to the next person in that search result. And if they get responded to immediately, probably a lost opportunity. We want to make sure that that never happens, right? There's no clear criteria for qualification. Some firms have it maybe written down. Like I said, some firms have maybe their go-to, their star intake person that knows exactly what the attorneys like and their leads and the cases. And sometimes it may be a bit subjective. And when there's subjective or subjectivity, errors can occur, right? So we want to create an objective viewpoint of what a great lead is. And we want to standardize that with every single lead that comes in. So the team knows the best fit, can jump on them immediately. And if it's not the right fit, can move away from it and not spend any of their valuable time on it. Okay. Gut-based decisions, again, that's subjectivity versus objective truth. And then there's no real feedback loop between the marketing and the intake team, right? This is the constant battle. I'm sure Chris has dealt with this a bit. I dealt with it when I was, in the SEO world. Is sometimes from an SEO perspective, you can be doing everything right. You can be showing up in search. You can be doing great with your ads. You can be driving a ton of leads. And then the firm that or the business that's getting those leads may say they're not the right fit. They're not quality. But in some cases they could be. We just weren't able to ever get in touch with them because we were slow to respond, right? It's a constant challenge. And so having really good feedback loop to identify what the right fit leads are, what sources they're coming from, continuing to invest in those areas and maybe reallocating investment in the areas where it's not driving great fit leads, right? This is a constant feedback loop that needs to take place. Okay. Uh, Something that is often thought about is like, and what we hear is if we don't capture that lead from, that initial inquiry, the staff's typically so bogged down with all of the leads coming in that staying engaged with or trying to stay on top of every lead and nurturing them is often overlooked, right? And so we need to make sure that intake isn't just this one-time event. It's something that is a system. And so the formula that we think about is like, a lead comes in, immediately we can qualify these leads, and we're going to talk a little bit about how AI is able to do this. We can then prioritize on the best fit leads and we can immediately follow up with those, right? Because again, from that scenario, you get a lead that came in first, but it's not the right fit, and we're prioritizing that, and we're not able to get to that better quality lead that has a higher likelihood of converting. That could be potentially opportunity lost, okay? And then again, it happens over time. It's not always the first contact. I would imagine most firms on here and their intake team would say like a lot of their day is spent trying to chase down these leads, right? Trying to get in touch with them to even see if they're a qualified fit. That takes time, energy, and effort. And we want to help eliminate that process, right? And then again, should be consistent across your team. We want to make sure that your newest intake member has objective guidelines as to what a great fit lead is and can take action on it, just like the 10-year vet who's been doing it and knows it like the back of their hand. Okay, we want to level that playing field. And so just some of the cost of like a manual intake process, right? Manual processes, they simply don't scale. I think what we hear all the time is a lot of the systems and processes that get implemented at a firm early on works when they've got 10 leads a month coming in, or works when they've got 20 or 30 leads coming in a month. When they get to 50, when they get to 70, when they get to 100, 200, 500, 1,000 leads, those systems and processes that once worked starts to become unmanageable, right? Or the classic tale and the classic challenge is the only way for them to keep up is to hire more people, right? Hire more people, throw more bodies at the situation to try and solve it, which we can all probably agree is a very expensive way to go about scaling a business, right? Human capital is always the most expensive expense for any business. It's the same at Lawmatics and same at, for my sales team. How can we take more of that work that humans have historically had to do and automate that through AI, right? And that sounds scary, right? Because we're hiring these people to be experts. What I'm talking about is building an AI model and a system that you guys control, that you guys determine what the criteria of a great fit lead is. It allows it to objectively score. Your team can then focus on those best fit leads. And what we also can do is we can correct and train that agent to continue to get better based off of your team's expertise and feedback. It's kind of that perfect loop. So again, manual process, they don't scale. Hours spent reviewing inquiries, inconsistent evaluations, that's subjective. Humans are naturally flawed. We might make the wrong call. Happens all the time. That could lead to a major case being missed or referred out that could have been a great fit, right? Burnout on the intake team, turnover, having to hire new people because it's too much work, they can't handle it. They self-select out, and now we've got to backfill, and now we've got to train, and now we've got to invest a ton of time, energy, and effort to get someone leveled up, right? Because we need them to be at that skill level that our veterans are at. And then the worst case scenario is missing out on high value opportunities, right? Really good leads that are coming in driven by marketing or driven by organic visibility that we don't get to that could be worth 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, $100,000 cases, meaning like really meaningful for a business, right? So what are our firms that are high converting doing differently? Okay, this is kind of how we shift to like the new world of how intake is being managed is, we clearly define what a good lead is. I would say if you haven't done that, first and foremost, define what a great fit lead is, right? If you have a specific case type that you want to really see more of, if you're multidisciplinary, what are the different case types that you see in each practice area that when you see come across the line or your intake team comes across the line, they're licking their chops. They know this is a great fit and the attorneys are going to be really excited. Have that documented, right? Score and segment leads early. Again, we're doing this through AI, so that definition of what a good lead is can come into Lawmatics and it can immediately be a chase hard. It can immediately be triggered and said, this is a lead that we want to prioritize before anything else. And we can also automate actions on this that say, hey, a new lead came in, our AI agent scored it, said this is a chase hard, gave you the reasoning as to why. Now your staff is calling that thing first versus the one that was inconclusive and we weren't quite sure if it's even a good fit for us. We want to get them across the line as soon as possible, right? Respond faster to strong fit inquiries. Where we focus with Lawmatics is automations. Sometimes that's a catch-all word, but imagine every lead that's coming in is getting emailed and text immediately. They're getting a intake questionnaire submitted to them as soon as they inquire. They're getting their lead submitted to the intake staff, and if it's a high priority lead, that team is getting a high priority task that says call this lead right now before you do anything else. That helps you respond to these leads as quickly as possible and increases your likelihood, right? Chris will talk about this, I'm sure, just as much as we're sales leaders. If a lead comes in from an inbound channel, I want my team calling that thing yesterday. I want them to call it immediately because we know the high likelihood that they didn't just inbound to Lawmatics or to BluShark. They might be looking at other options. And typically, the first person that responds to them and gets them on the phone and gets a meeting set in front of them has the highest likely to convert that lead into a customer, right? And so law firms, oops, didn't mean to do that. Law firms and intake should be treated just as a sales org, right? Speed of lead is critical. And then aligning your marketing and your intake and operations all together, right? So everyone knows what a great fit lead is. Everyone knows that every lead that comes in is going to be managed and intake and processed the exact same way, right? The operations is going to be the exact same way. It gives a really high degree of confidence that no lead is going to be left behind, no lead is going to slip through the cracks. Okay. And so prioritizing generally just changes everything. Not all leads deserve the same response. And I know we all pride ourselves on being that boutique law firm, right? I hear it every single day. I don't want to overly automate because I want to give this boutique experience to our potential clients. 100%, I agree with that. The way we view it and the way I think about it is we want to give that incredible boutique experience to the best fit leads that we know are going to have the highest likelihood of converting, and freeing up the intake staff's time with manual work that's usually pulling them away is usually the best way of being able to do that. If all of your intake team's time is being spent calling and giving that world-class experience every single time, that's what they spend 90% of their day on, probably going to be able to offer a much more boutique experience when it comes to intake. And that experience sets the tone for what that potential client is going to feel and likely experience throughout their whole time with having a case with your firm. So poor fits, right? Let's say it's a different practice area than you offer. I'm sure we have experiences where you might be a PI firm and then you're getting a family lead or alternative, right? Like family law and you're getting auto injury accident leads coming in. those aren't the right fit for us. Okay. We may want to deprioritize. We want to maybe immediately refer out, which we can do through automations, but those are probably not the leads that we want to be working and calling immediately. It's not the best fit for us, right? Unclear fits. This is where the team's time is a lot of time being spent is trying to gather more information, right? We've got some piece to the puzzle, but we don't have the full picture. Now I got to get these people on the phone. I got to try and email, text, go back and forth to get a response. We want to help automate that process. So if we get some of the intake form filled out, or if we are on the phone with them and the call gets cut short, now I can automatically send them an intake questionnaire that captures the rest of that picture. And once that picture is complete, we can run it through our AI agent. It'll score that lead and it'll tell you what it scored it, why it scored it, and what action you should do. And once the agent gets to a place where you feel super confident, you can automate actions off of that. So if it's a chase hard, you love these leads that are being categorized as chase hard, maybe you want to send a retainer agreement, right? Obviously dependent on the practice area. Maybe if it's a, not a great fit, again, like I said, you want to refer out. And then a strong fit, we want to immediately follow up every single time. We cannot lose these leads. We want to make sure that we're getting them every single time. Okay. So consistency beats heroics, right? And I think generally your best intake rep can be a detriment in some instances, right? If all of that institutional knowledge lives with that one individual and all the rest of the intake staff have to go to them and say like, hey, is this a good fit? That's time. That takes time away from them being able to make that determination, which typically takes time for them to be able to get to that potential new client and make that answer and move them through the funnel. What happens if someone moves on, right? You've got that rock star employee, been with you for a long time, you've invested a lot of time and energy, but all of that lives within their head. What happens if they move on, right? We want to make sure that that standard is met and outlined so that every single intake person has the same criteria that they're working off of. And then, processes break down when people change. So I kind of got ahead of myself here, but hit on these pieces. We want to be consistent. We want to have objective structure to our lead qualification that every single intake person on the team is running their leads through so that there isn't anything that gets, slips through the cracks here. So how does technology play into this, right? Chris talked a bit about AI. Obviously, AI is a huge focus for Lawmatics, as most companies at this point, but we do it a little bit differently. And so, again, I think about where we differentiate is the idea of handing over your valuable leads and scoring or qualifying them through AI. That could be a scary thing. I will be the first to say that. Where we, I think, spend a lot of time and energy thinking about this differently and working with our customers to determine like what they really need to get value out of AI is a platform that they determine, right? It's not an out of the box, hey, every single firm feels these leads are the right fit. We know that's not the case. We want to know what your objective criteria is for a great fit lead, for an okay lead, for one that we don't want to work. And then we can build agents around that, right? And so once that's in place, now we can automate evaluations every single time. It's no longer a judgment play. Take subjectivity out of it. We apply that same criteria every single time. So again, your best rep and your newest rep are going to have the same criteria that their leads are being qualified and scored through so that they know this is the right fit and they can take their action and get them on the line and convert it. We want to surface clear next steps, meaning dictating what the staff is doing. I think analysis paralysis is always a real challenge of like, I don't know what the next step here is. AI lead scoring can really help clear that up, right? And in a lot of cases, take some of that action off of their plate. And then again, saving time without sacrificing quality. The last thing we would want to do is start to implement AI into this and then see the quality of the leads that are getting passed over to the attorneys go down. That is not the goal. It's to make sure that all of the leads are being scored the same way. And the intake team is going hyper focused on the best fit leads first so that they're converting and sending over the best fit leads every single time. All right. So obviously I've touched on it a little bit, but How does AI change this game? The manual component of it is no longer part of this process, right? There's a nice little visual here, but this is kind of what I mean. So if a lead gets submitted, whether it's a phone intake that they put all of the information into a form and then they submit that, or it comes through a web intake form, once that lead is being scored, which happens automatically through automation, it's going to populate a determination, right? You can see on here, Qualify AI, that's our qualifying agent or our qualifying AI product. You can see it made the determination of chase, okay? What it does beyond that that I think is really cool is it gives you the confidence, right? Right now it's a medium, but it also gives you the information as to why it's determining it as a chase, why it's medium confidence, and what it's missing to be able to determine. I've got a really high degree of confidence that this is a chase or a chase hard, which is an even better version, right? And so this tells the intake team, hey, I need to go get these pieces of information. That's my next step. Once I have that, now I can really make a quick determination on what this lead should be, right? Again, the other piece of this that I think is really powerful is if it makes a determination that's incorrect, your best intake person says, hey, this said, refer out, and I think we should be all over this case. Within Qualify AI, that intake person can change the score and train the model in that moment versus just being kind of handcuffed to whatever the model is telling it, right? Which I think is a really cool thing. And it continues to just build the confidence with the team. That's where our accounts, I think, have really seen the differentiator here, where it's not giving over full control. It's using AI to help supplement a lot of the initial piece, but keeping that power within their skilled employees. And then again, delivers consistent feedback immediately. So what it looks like in practice, again, smarter intake flow, a lead comes in. Sorry, I'm getting a little dry here. A lead comes in, automatically evaluates every single lead, clearly prioritize or helps the team prioritize so that they know exactly what action to take every single time. Okay, and this is what you can see here in terms of, you know, chase hard, refer out, chase. If your intake team's coming in here as an intake manager or a sales manager, I'm going to have them focus on those chase hards right out of the gate. That's your first order of operation. Once you've reached out to all of those, we're going to go after the chase. Then we're going to go after the inconclusive. The refer out, we're going to have automations that's running that. For not a good fit, we'll have automations that are running on the back of that as well. So again, the power of this, there's a ton of power, but better intake equals better marketing ROI, right? I don't know if we've heard the term like cost of acquisition or CAC, right? Cost of customer acquisition or cost of customer. So what the thing that drives that down most is the higher conversion rate, right? So if you're spending X amount of dollars on marketing and you're converting 20% of your leads, you're going to have a cost of acquisition number. If you have a process that improves and now you're converting 30 or 40%, that cost of acquisition for that same spend is going to go down dramatically because you're getting more revenue for that same ad spend, right? And so how does this play into that, right? If every lead that's coming in is being immediately scored and qualified so that your team's hyper focused on the best fit, they're able to convert more of those good fit leads, less time wasted on the ones that aren't, better understanding from marketing of what's driving the best sources, which helps create sustainable growth, which most businesses are looking for, right? Ours included. This is something that every week on the Lawmatics side, when we're talking about marketing and sales, we're talking about cost of acquisition and our conversion rates and how can we drive down CAC so that we can get more from our spend. So a couple key takeaways to take back to the firm if you're here and looking for ideas. Uh, Intake is a huge revenue driver. Can be a huge revenue driver, right? When we think about some of the value props with Lawmatics, typically we're seeing at a minimum of 5% conversion rate just through our automation engine without Qualify AI. 15, 20, 25% increases are very common. That has a huge impact on revenue, right? If we think about average case values being 5, 10, 15, $20,000, you convert twice as many cases, major, major impact on the growth of the business, right? Prioritization matters more than volume. Okay. You could have a ton of leads. You could have 100, 200, 500 leads. But if you don't know the good ones from the bad, you're going to focus on them all the same. And it's not going to likely yield the best results. Okay. Consistency beats effort. Again, you could have an intake team that's working overtime, killing themselves to try and stay on top of every single lead, or you can use technology that scores every lead and gives directives to make it really easy for that team to be as efficient in their day and probably do the things that they like most about their job, which is being on the phone with potential clients and getting them closed. And then again, technology is going to make the best practices scalable, right? In this world of AI and how businesses are shifting, it's not to necessarily eliminate roles, although we have had firms say like we haven't had to backfill intake team members as they've left because we now have this in place, which when you think about an intake staff being pretty expensive, like that can be a challenge in its own right or a value in its own right. It's to make those individuals more successful in their role, right? So that they know exactly what leads to focus on. They can use the skills that they've developed, why you hired them to help convert more of the leads that you really care about. So I haven't taken a look at questions, but I'll put this up here for a second if anyone wants to take the triple-headed QR code task on, and if you guys have interest in learning a little bit more about either offering, I think the one in the middle is the presentation. So if you're looking for that, there it is. So
Yeah, and quick update. Anybody that scanned that presentation earlier with that first QR code, this QR code is going to give you the most up to date with a little more information. So please rescan that one to get the most up to date. And then just set out a poll. You guys want to learn more about Lawmatics or BluShark? Just take the poll there. And then on this QR code right here, like Jess said, middle one's the presentation. And those links underneath myself and Jess are direct schedule meetings for us. So we'd love to open up for some Q&A.
do you want me to pop off the screen? I can stop
You
sharing.
can leave that on there just in
Okay.
case they want to hit the
Cool.
QR code.
And there
And
were a couple of questions here I can start with too.
yeah,
Someone was asking, do you have tips on what to look for in a rock star intake specialist if our firm is in the process of hiring? You kind of mentioned you have all these elements that can be worked with a human, and then you don't want that rock star to be a bottleneck, right? So, like, if I wanted to beef up my team, what am I looking for?
Yeah, I mean, I think about it as how I evaluate sales talent. Because again, I think of intake as a sales function within any law firm. And so some of the things that I look for is coachability, right? I like to know that someone is able to take coaching and apply it quickly and are people that seek out and want to learn, right? They want to take on more, they want to get better, they have an insatiable like thirst for knowledge. I think people that are gritty, right? Like when I think about intake, again, as I think about sales, it's challenging. There's people that are reaching out to them that are maybe high stress, maybe injured, maybe going through a divorce. Like, can you empathize? Can you be someone where they're faced with difficult challenges, but you're able to get up every single day and kind of move through it with grace, regardless of the situation? And so I think there's a lot of just like behavioral based things that you would want to look for. Now, there's I think like any new employee, their ability to come in and be successful is directly tied to your ability to set them up for success. And what I mean by that is like when I think about my sales team, I'm really big about documentation. I want to make sure that anything that is related to our process, from how we demo our product to how we log things in our CRM versus escalations or whatever it might be, there's a very clear documented process that they can follow. And the reason why is if that individual becomes really knowledgeable about that, but it all lives in their head, and again, they move on, they're not going to be able to help the next person level up. And so I don't want myself and I don't want my managers and I don't want anyone individually to be a bottleneck for someone's ability to be successful. Now, I don't just give them a playbook of here's how you operate, wipe my hands and say good luck, but I want them to have something that they can refer back to at any point so that they can get their own answers or their own questions answered. And documentation is usually the best way to go about that. So, not a super direct way of answering that question. I don't hire for intake, but again, I think of the function very similar to sales, and I've hired hundreds of salespeople over my career. Those are the types of things that I really look for. And usually people that are looking to grow their career, right? It may not necessarily be in a law firm, but if they're coming in on intake and they've got big goals and aspirations and they're trying to grow just professionally, you're probably going to get a personality that wants to take on more and is going to go above and beyond in anything that's put in front of them.
Yeah, no, that was great. A quick question for, it looks like Chris. So, what if I have multiple locations or I'm thinking about getting multiple locations? How am I supposed to balance getting reviews on each of those, especially if handle most of my clients in one location?
Yeah, that's a big question, especially understanding where you can put reviews and how to guide the clients to where you want, right? In multiple locations, I think the first step is understanding how many reviews you need in each location to actually get that conversion, right? If you have 100 reviews and the three pack, every firm in there has 200 plus, we obviously know we need to get more reviews. If you have 100 and everybody in that three pack has 50, we're good there in reviews. We can start pushing those reviews to another location that doesn't have the reviews necessary. So I think the easy answer there is understanding the research aspect of it so we can decide where to get the reviews. And then if there's multiple locations and they all need reviews, a lot of times it's, going after the lowest hanging fruit first so we can get those early wins, start getting those cases, those clicks, those leads, and then transition over to one of the more difficult locations once we're there.
Awesome. We've got a question from Richard, and I'm not sure if that's more of a question or if it was a comment, but it sounds like he's trying to figure out how do you balance the different types of cases versus the types of process that the client wants on the intake, right?
Yeah, I
That
mean,
makes sense to you? Kind of what he's saying?
I think so. Typically, when I think about how to structure like the intake process, it's usually based off of how the firm is doing it today, right? Like, what is the experience that they're providing where someone, reaches out for representation and they move through that process as seamlessly as possible? What does that like perfect intake look like? Again, documenting that, understanding the steps that need to take place to make that happen, and then again, automating a lot of the things that are automatable and the things that aren't that require that personalized touch, making sure that the team has what they need to get notifications, the visibility into it. Okay, it's this stage of that intake process. We need you to call or we need you to send this. Or again, a lot of that stuff can be automated. So I think of it as what is the perfect scenario today? What has to happen for that to look like? And then what parts of that process can be automated and streamlined and what needs the human touch and just making sure that that's consistently happening every single time. Because we've all seen that experience play out where it happens perfectly, but then maybe the team is busy or someone's sick or something comes up and it's hard for that same experience to be delivered for that next lead that fits that perfect criteria.
Awesome. Looks like we've got time for maybe one or two questions left here. This one in particular says, I would love to hear Chris's thoughts on how to motivate clients to leave a review. We have automated these requests, but even the happiest clients tend to ignore these requests.
That's a good question. I think that's one of the things that comes up a lot in these conversations is how to get reviews. I think the first step is always ask and ask more than once. Oftentimes firms are selective on who they ask and they ask maybe once and don't ask multiple times. So automating the process is great, but it definitely needs to have more of a human element to it. And then hitting them in multiple areas, meaning email, text, calls and combining different levels of interaction. Some people are going to respond better to text, where some will respond better to email. I would say, spoiler alert, text does work the best. And just making sure that you're hitting them multiple times throughout the process. The other thing is getting a little creative, where if you have an individual that has a spouse and they're extremely happy, asking both, right? Trying to get two individuals to leave a review, as opposed to one. Utilizing intake, anybody that's had an experience with your firm can leave a review. So how do you utilize intake for somebody that didn't become a client to actually ask for a review? Having a process for that with multiple touch points as well. Always keeping it professional and branded on point. But I would say it is really a factor of asking multiple times in a positive fashion. That's what we've seen work best for getting reviews more consistently. Because you're right, I had somebody recently I spoke to, and it was a referral from a friend that they know really well, and got a huge settlement, and they still weren't able to get a review. And she said she was pulling teeth to get that. So yeah, it's one of those things where it just needs to happen multiple times in a positive professional format, and you'll definitely see more if you hit them from multiple angles and ask multiple times.
Awesome. All right. And we've got a minute left here for people. Stick with us for another minute. Just this will be recorded. We're going to share the recording after to everybody who registered. A wrap-up question for both of you. If you had to summarize, got a lot of great information from both of you today, but if you had to summarize and give one biggest takeaway and tip for law firms, for Chris, for you to increase leads, and for you, Jess, to increase conversions on intake, what would it be? One last giveaway.
Yeah, you want to start, Jess?
Sure. It's a, it's a good question. Automate the things that your staff is not using their best skills and like brain power for, so that they can do their best work on the meaningful work that moves the needle with potential clients. There's so much back and forth and administrative things that are not needed for them to be the ones triggering or sending or coordinating, that can allow them to focus on the meaningful work of being on the phone, being supportive to someone in need, being a great representation of you and and your firm, and moving them along in the process because they're available to every single person, and not scrambling to try and just keep their head above water.
Yeah, and I think mine, I'm going to have to give two, right? The first easy one is reviews. Put together a process for reviews and get those consistently. And the second one is don't sleep on the foundation, meaning a lot of firms right now are getting excited about AI, but as we saw through some of these case studies and through all the data, the foundation of the Google profile and the website need to be dialed in. That is the core of everything that is going to enable you to rank in the future. So do not sleep on the foundation. Make sure that is soundly set up. And once you have that, you'll notice everything else becomes easier. All the AI and the ChatGPT, as that gets more progressive, your foundation will help you get there. But if your foundation's weak, just like the house, you build on a weak foundation, you're going to have issues, and you're always going to wish that you fixed it.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. Leave it to you guys to wrap it up if you have any last thoughts you want to give, but we will be sending out the recording to everybody that registered, and everyone who did scan the QR code should be getting their presentation already sent automatically in your inbox.
Cool. Chris,
Awesome. Well, I
I
appreciate
used to talk about the foundation of the house when I was talking SEO. So that
it.
I'm like,
It's
this guy's
relatable.
speaking my language. Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, it's relatable. It's boring sometimes, but it's necessary, right?
The core. Yeah. The foundation of
Yep.
a house like plumbing is not that exciting, but you need it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Cool.
Awesome. I don't have anything else. You have anything else, Jess?
No, I think we're good unless I missed any questions. I don't
I
think
think
so.
we're good. And if
Cool.
people want, they have your contact information,
Yep.
so I can shoot those over to you guys individually after.
Cool.
Beautiful.
Sounds
Thanks,
great.
everyone.
Thanks all.